everybody. Calling the finance meeting to order. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to the popular annual financial report. Joe?
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us to come in and speak to you concerning our annual report, our PAFR. It's been a couple of years since we had an opportunity to come before you. This is our 14th year for producing a PAFR, and for 13 years we've received the GFOA award for recognizing the work that we do. The PAFR is an in-house production. Mike and I are mainly responsible for the content, but we have staff within our office. Lisa Weaver came up with the cover, and in fact, that came from our Visitors Bureau. She coordinated getting the picture. And we also have Bob DeGrossa in our internal audit who reviews it. So although Mike and I are here, it's our office that really put the components of this together. We coordinate with other county departments, row offices, and county organizations for our more interesting materials. With Al's go-ahead, the idea of the PAFR originated from the GFOA, and we just took it by the horns and went forward with it. It's designed to be digested by a multitude of readers. It can be picked up by county-savvy readers such as yourself, but it's also geared toward those that may not know much about Cumberland County. The inside cover is a letter from Al, and this is a welcome to the readers, but also it gives us the guidelines and the parameters which this report's created. It's a summary of our financial reports. It's a non-GAAP report, but it's really composed of the figures from our larger document, the capital. And hopefully, with it being a smaller document, they'll be more interested in reading it. The second page is geared towards someone that may not be familiar where Cumberland County is at, what's going on within our county. So it's basically a welcome to Cumberland County. And also on this page is a table of contents, which gives you a preview of what's within, and also the photo credits. On page 3 and 4 is basically the tantamount of county government is its elected officials. Page 3 and 4 presents our elected officials' names, their positions, and also their contact information. I believe it's a good reach out to the public. We also ask our elected officials to review their descriptions of their office, their photos, make sure it's an up-to-date photo, and also ask them for a few statistics and indicators of what they provide and what services they provide. For someone looking for county service information, short of the internet, it may be one of the second most useful documents. And a thank you has to go out to Tammy Shearer for these photos. A lot of them are provided from her. Page 5 and 6, we start getting into some demographic information which may be interesting to people within our county, but also outside. And it also compares it to our 6 neighboring counties in the state of PA. On page 5, the top graph shows the Cumberland County's population growth. Since 2010, we have increased 5.6%. And in the last 2 years, we've been the fastest growing county within the state.
240, I've been using I thought I was up to date. I was using 246,000 residents, but the latest census estimate has it as 248,500.
Correct. And that's based off the estimates. Until they do the census in a couple of years, they'll revise that. And going on to the median household income, Cumberland County fares very well. It shows that a median household income of $61,820, which is the highest in the region, and Pennsylvania. So on page 6, we start reviewing some of the economic conditions and a view of it through the unemployment rate. And Cumberland County fares very well at a 3.5% unemployment rate. And we took a quote directly from the CAEDC. It says the positive environment or positive employment climate is partly due to major employers in the government, healthcare, retail, transportation, and warehousing industries that are located, and in many cases, headquarters here. The second graph on page 6 shows that we're tied with Dauphin County with the shortest commute time, which allows citizens to not spend as much time in a vehicle or public transit as our surrounding counties may have to. And the last page is the median home prices. And we are the second highest in the mid-state, trailing Lancaster County. With market forces controlling the area housing prices, it shows that Cumberland County is a desired place to live. This statement is reinforced by our population growth on page 5. Moving on to page 7 and 8, we start diving into the meat and potatoes as far as our financial information goes. These statements are derived from our CAFR, but they're summarized in such a way they may be more digestible on a layman's terms reading the financial statements, because it can get very confusing in our CAFR. These statements are a little bit different than the fund statements or budgetary statements you guys receive, because they do include long-term debt as part of the liabilities and capital assets. And they record our core cost of funds receivable that we track. We present 3 years of data to make sure you can start seeing some trends. And if you take a look, we increased 10 million from 2015, and it's in the 3-year trajectory has showed that similar path. And also there was a reduction of 10 million in long-term liabilities. On page 8, it's a statement of net activities, and again, these are on full accrual. And it's where it's fair to say that our debt principal payments are not recorded as expenses, but a reduction of liabilities. And asset depreciation is recorded versus capital expenditures. It's more of it's the full accrual method of accounting, more business-like. And this last year, we had a surplus of $4.4 million. And lastly on this page is a graph showing a breakdown of how our expenses are being divvied out between the activities at the county. On page 9, we dive into some of the major county initiatives, and I work with Mike on this to make sure it's a small amount of page for everything that we do at the county, so we try to narrow it down in our view as far as what is the most pertinent. And this year we mentioned the East Cycling Center, which opened up in 2017, but a lot of the decision-making and the efforts towards getting that with open up in 2017 occurred last year. We also mentioned the public transit regionalization effort in comparing the cost between our local providers. And lastly, we mentioned that our major initiatives is our county outreach for the opioid epidemic, and mention how we have an interdepartmental effort going forward. And on page 10, it shows how the county's money is at work. And dollar is a good presentation as far as for every real estate tax dollar that is collected, where it's going to. 75% going to a school district and 1% going towards the library $1.14 towards Cumberland County.
I presume that's an average, right?
It is, it is. And I have to give credit to finance with this. We asked them to provide us the information on that. And the last thing I'll speak about before I hand it over to Mike is a per resident spending graph. And this graph is based off of our general fund, modified accrual. It's like our budget to actual report in our CAFR. And what it does is it'll take a departmental spending for the year and divide it by the population to get a per resident spending by department. Now, it's fair to mention that if you look at recorder of deeds in the second column, that when there's revenue offsetting a department's expenses, it may show up as in brackets, as a surplus coming into the county. But it gives you an idea of how the spending is occurring per resident within the county. And if you have any questions, I know I spoke fairly quickly, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, in general, Bill's not necessarily any view. This chart, the per resident spending is very similar to what we used to put on the tax bill, isn't it? It was the same type of chart. When did we take that off and why did we take that off?
I'm not sure why.
Anybody remember?
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that. We may have to go to tax.
We get a lot of positive comments on what we did. There was some confusion too. People misinterpreted that.
Yeah, and sometimes you read too much into it.
Yeah. I can't remember us getting a really good reason for why it was removed. Tax. Okay, thank you.
Sure. That being said, I'll hand it over.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And Bill really does a fabulous effort on this whole document. He's primarily responsible for the quality in addition to the whole team in the office. I'm going to cover the comparisons beginning on page 11, run through. The first comparison we have present is county post-employment benefit costs. That's our county retirement plan in the dark blue. It looks almost black. That's the county pension. That's reflective of the county's cost, the county's contribution, not employees. And then the red or orange, depending upon your eyesight, is post-employment health care. It labeled as post-employment health care. As preparing this, I also noticed that one or more other counties also provide free life insurance, which is part of this, and I'll talk on that. Before I get into, let me the individual comparisons. Let me kind of give an overview. This analysis is of county's key financial metrics in the region, South Central PA. I believe finance does it of statewide, class 3 counties, and so forth. But this is a regional comparison, so that's how it differs. It stops short, ours here today, stops short of looking at the effectiveness of spending, as county programming activity output are not uniformly measured or sometimes not measured at all by counties. In fact, Cumberland County is a standout in requiring performance metrics as part of its budget process, department evaluations, and individual compensation changes annually. Kudos to our Board of Commissioners for establishing this accountability for the public money that is spent here. We deserve recognition for establishing and maintaining this important achievement. I view benchmarking against peers, as we're going to get into, not as a curiosity exercise, though there is some curiousness about what's presented, but an exercise instead that informs us what we're doing well, and conversely, areas that we're not leading in and may wish to explore best practices to improve our own performance. Also by understanding what areas we are standouts in and why we have a clearer view of how to maintain our leadership in those areas. So it's a good opportunity for introspection as well. So getting into the first graph, post-employment benefit cost comparison in South Central PA. Franklin, Adams, Cumberland are comparable on the low end of the spectrum. Lancaster, Dauphin, York spends significantly more, 50 to 200% more in this area. Attributable to high OPEB benefit costs, I'm going to speak for a moment on Lancaster's numbers. Lancaster spends, Lancaster is a 1/80th class for pension benefits, a tad leaner than Cumberland is in terms of benefit offerings from its pension plan, a factor that lowers Lancaster's pension arc. However, a greater contributor to Lancaster's lower pension arc on a per capita basis is Lancaster's exceptionally lean full-time staffing ratio to residents. This is illustrated on the graph on page 15. It's quite notable. I don't have the answer to that, that they're kind of a standout in terms of lean operations. Lancaster's overall lean full-time staffing level on a per resident basis appears to contribute to Lancaster showing on a number of the metrics discussed today. In regard to the column to the right of Lancaster, Dauphin County, Dauphin spends 100% more than double what Cumberland County spends on retiree benefits. Dauphin's higher spending is attributable in part to higher pension benefits. They are 1/60th class, Dauphin County is, versus Cumberland's 1/70th class. And Dauphin County includes life insurance benefits free for retiree members in their OPEB plan as well. In addition, OPEB benefits are negotiated in their union contracts in Dauphin County, whereas that hasn't occurred in Cumberland County. York spends 200% more on retiree benefits than does Cumberland County as a result, in part at least, that they're asking for no contributions, none towards the cost of post-retirement health care premiums for OPEB plan participants. That's pretty significant. York County spent almost just short of $6 million on health care premiums for retirees in the year presented versus, in comparison to $143,000 by Cumberland County. York County's pension arc is higher also as a result of York's 1/50th class pension plan, significantly more generous than most county pension plans in the state. Although I must say York has adopted a 1/80th class for new hires fairly recently. As personnel is one of the highest categories of spending in most governmental activities, the disparities shown in this graph help explain to some degree disparities in the graphs that follow. The next graph, reliance on real estate taxes to fund county programs and activities. Lebanon County on this measure is a perennial leader. What this measures is you look at the total revenues and of their total budget on a government-wide basis. For example, Lebanon County uses taxes to fund 26%, represent 26% of that total, which means then the complement of that, 74% is state federal grants fees. However, as a result of Lebanon County's approving at the end of 2015 a 40% tax hike, it appears likely that Cumberland County will take the lead in this measure in the future. Though this graph does reflect effective leverage of federal and state grants to fund programming, it can be misleading by seeming to imply that Cumberland County, York, and Dauphin taxpayers share an equal burden at 29 to 30% of their county's spending. In truth, though, York and Dauphin taxpayers bear a much larger tax burden by virtue of their much larger budgets, i.e. higher spending levels. And the disparity is pretty significant. We'll get into that. So I just wish to point out, though, that we seem grouped similarly together in a class, but if you look at dollars involved, it's actually a great disparity between the three counties of Cumberland Smaller counties such as Franklin and Adams have to rely more on their local taxes to fund programming, as there's a strong correlation, if you look statewide, between federal and state grants and the size of governments. For example, in largest counties in the Commonwealth, federal and state grants, notably to fund human service programs, represent a much larger share of county budgets than is the case in the smallest counties in the Commonwealth. And for that reason, because it has kind of fundamental differences like that, it's somewhat apples and oranges to compare small to large counties. So most of my comparison will be looking at the other third-class counties in South Central PA, York, Dauphin, Lancaster, along with Cumberland. The graph titled at the bottom of 12, County Real Estate Tax Revenue Per Resident. Again, Cumberland appears as a contender next year to lead this measure using data from 2016 in light of the 40% real estate hike approved in December 15 by Lebanon County. Although it's important that Cumberland County provides more programming, more programming and services for its residents than does Lebanon County. As such, Cumberland provides, can be argued, provides more value for the tax dollars that it receives. Comparing total real estate tax revenues, Cumberland County's 51 million. And the numbers behind this of course takes county tax revenues divided by the population. Cumberland County's tax revenues to get to the $206 per resident is 51 million. Just to put some aggregate dollars behind the equation. Contrast, so Cumberland County's 51 million contrasts with the 102 million that Dauphin County takes in taxes from its residents in the form of county real estate taxes. So it's interesting that's actually a figure double already, and Dauphin County has only a 10% larger population. The graph at the top of page 13, general fund spending per resident. This graph reflects all spending emanating from the general fund. And when I talk about spending emanating from the general fund, that's where the vast majority, it's not too far from absolutely true to say it's all local tax money is what funds general fund spending. But this graph also includes expenditures plus subsidies to human service programs and subsidies to other county activities. So this is all inclusive, money coming out of the general fund. This graph indicates the use demand as established by the commissioners of each respective county on county real estate taxes imposed on residents of those counties. If one graph had to be chosen to summarize county cost efficiency of operations, I would suggest this be the graph to be used. Cumberland performs the best on this important metric. Of the third-class counties in this region, Lancaster County performs admirably as well on this metric, spending only 16% more than Cumberland. Dauphin County is a standout at the other end of the spectrum on general fund spending per resident. Dauphin spent 130% more local real estate tax money in 2015 than did Cumberland, again on a per resident basis. Dauphin County spent 50% more than even the second highest spender of general fund monies in this region, York County, again on a per resident basis. Whereas Cumberland County's general fund spent 64, and these are the aggregate dollar figures behind these percentages. Cumberland County's general fund spent $64 million in 2015, whereas Dauphin County's general fund spent $164 million. It's a difference of an even $100 million Dauphin County spent above Cumberland County. I just thought that was interesting. Public safety, the graph below, the bottom of 13, public safety spending per resident. Public safety is a category that I suggest the government should not aim to be the low spender in. In this area, Cumberland County spending is near the middle of the pack for third-class counties in this region. The graph at the top of page 14, corrections spending per resident, shows large disparity, large dispersion on the amounts counties spend on corrections. Lancaster and Cumberland are the most cost efficient on a per resident basis in the region. Cumberland County's low cost, comparatively low cost of $75 per resident for corrections is aided by its diversionary programs and ostensibly a lower crime rate here than in some other counties in the region, although I don't have statistics on this. It's just what I surmise. York and Dauphin spend the most, the graph indicates. However, determining the cost efficiency in the area of corrections requires more data than simply cost divided by county population. I actually went into the Department of Corrections statistics, and it's surprising to me there were a lot of unfilled and incompleted reports by counties on their county prison operations. Cumberland County had all their fields completed and complied with, but there's a lot of gaps, so I wasn't able to analyze it any further. Safe communities, judicial spending, the bottom of page 14. Cumberland County is a relatively low spender. It's a fairly narrow range, unlike correction spending, among the large counties, except for York and Dauphin. And now, I did get some data I can share with you on this. On a per judge, I was trying to think, how to kind of put this on an even footing outside of a per resident basis. And you look at the judges. So I ran a calculation per judge, and Cumberland County came out a leader with 2.7 million per judge, using the audited figures, as compared to Lancaster County, which was just a hair away at 2.8 million per judge. Wasn't able to get data from York. Dauphin County came out at 4.78 million per judge. So they are a spending leader on that metric. The Cumberland compares favorably.
Well, do you know how many judges Dauphin County have compared to us to? I mean, so the cost per judge, and I'm just fairly embarrassed about, but cost per judge in Dauphin County is like twice as much as it is for us.
In
But
revenue.
then they also have a lot more judges than we have, right?
Not a lot, according to their website. They have 9 judges. We have 6 and 2 senior judges.
I thought they might have more than that.
Yeah, I thought they might have had more.
That's why I did it per judge.
Yeah.
I don't know how many there are,
Yeah.
per judge.
York's the ones that, they had 14.
Yeah, they have their ICE
that's
detention facility. I thought that complicated things. I thought, since I don't have the intricacies of that, I'm not familiar with that, I'd stay out of attributing using statistics, not being sure where those judges factor into the data. Lancaster has 15, so they're 15 judges. Yeah. Now they have twice the population of Dauphin and Cumberland, so a much larger county, but they do have a sizable contingent of judges.
What about York?
Again, I stayed out of that data because I don't have
Okay.
ICE detention. Full-time employees at the top of 15, the graph, full-time employees per 1,000 residents. This is an indicator of how leanly staffed a county is. Lancaster has always, since we started doing this office, started doing these comparisons, Lancaster has always been the leader and always floated around at approximately three full-time employees per 1,000 residents. One can argue that, well, they're much larger, they're twice as large, but of course York is very large, they're at the other end of the spectrum, so That doesn't seem to certainly answer all of it, and credit, I think, is still accrual to Lancaster and their commissioners for running such an operation. Cumberland comes in a fairly close 4.2. We skew on the low end. Comparison, so you compare, for example, again, the numbers behind the numbers. Full-time employees in Lancaster are, with twice the population of Cumberland, are only 60% larger than Cumberland's full-time. So that's a compliment to Lancaster. However, you compare Lancaster to York, York has 700 more employees, full-time employees than York does, despite York having only 80% of the population. So that's an interesting disparity. And then the other comparison that can be drawn is between Cumberland and Dauphin County. We have approximately the same size populations. Again, Dauphin has 10% more currently population, yet has 400 or about 40% more full-time county employees. Number of days reserves in general fund balance. I think this rather speaks for itself. You're well schooled in fund balance. And I believe number of days reserved, that's as of the end of the year. If you don't get any more tax money in, that's how long your spending will carry you. Cumberland County is in certainly a secure position. You look at the hurricanes and natural disasters that are hitting Texas, Florida, and things happening on the international stage. We're really well suited to provide security, financial security, in the form of continuing to fund programs should bad things happen in Cumberland. And I think that's a positive. Plus, as you get down to the smaller number of days, month and a half, 2 months, as some of the counties have, Lancaster and York, you get into a position where you're having to issue tax anticipation notes, paying high interest rates, suffering your credit rating, which is driving your bond to note when you do go public and issue many public funds, having to then take more money from the taxpayer to pay on the form of interest to banks and lenders. So we're, I think, well situated in terms of fund balance. Long-term debt levels, Cumberland County should be proud that we're frugal borrowers as compared to other counties. This, I think, in absolute terms, we're well short of our maximum borrowing capacity. But comparing our spending, our borrowing level on a per capita, per resident basis of other governments in this region, we come in very favorably. Again, you take a look at the federal and state budgets on a per capita basis, and it's mind-bogglingly high. So we burden our residents with low borrowing and then low debt service on those borrowings. Credit to this board. And then I compare, kind of flowing into the next, I try to order these in a logical fashion: conservative financial practices, credit rating, based on all the above, if you will. Cumberland County has the highest credit rating, AAA, prime of all regions, of all counties in this region. And then page 17, you take a look at how strong is the county's financial position. This is, the page talks in terms of fund balance. Kind of what was said at the beginning of the top of page 16. I'm sorry. Top of page 16, number of days reserves in general fund balance. The county's fund balance is strong. And I'm happy to, Bill and I both be happy to take any questions.
Can you tell us about this disparity in public transportation costs?
I thought that was covered adequately elsewhere.
Bill and Mike, thank you very much. It's very, again, this is always very useful. I hope we can website so that, any of our residents who would be interested in seeing this. I think it is very good for comparison purposes and people who might be thinking as to if they're moving into the area, what county they might want to choose, where they might want to choose to live, where they might want to choose to start or grow a business. And I think we have a lot for us. And certainly our financial situation is, I think, to be admired. And this kind of spells it out.
And bottom line, this answers why Cumberland County has such a low, exceptionally competitive tax rate. And you should be really proud, our taxpayers and residents of Cumberland County should be proud. So I think we ought to seek to get the word out as much as we can.
I think on Jim's comments, this is very nicely done, as usual. So it's a very valuable tool. We really need to engage our public more in what county government does and how well it does it. And this just makes it very easy to grasp. This was somewhat also the intention with the changes we made to the county's budget documents as well a few years back. We had a narrative at the beginning, and now it's the budget and strategy documents. This is a very fine complement, maybe better in a lot of ways. These numbers are impressive. They point to a lot of work by a lot of people, and they really are very educational in terms of the drivers that we need to keep our eyes on. They're, because of, as you said, like how linked all of these various indicators are. But the only thing I would add is that these aren't things that are just once and done. You got to work at these constantly, and it's helpful for us to know what exactly we should be monitoring and working on. So I think you've done a great service here for the operational side of the shop as well as for the public in terms of demonstrating to them what their county government's doing.
It's an easy read. And my favorite page, I've used a lot of them, but it's this one. It's such a classic. And I don't mean to point fingers, but school districts are our main tax burden. And the county is one of your least. One question, on page 11, and I think you mentioned it under the pension, York County, you said they recently changed their ratio to class ratio. 1/50th to 1/80th.
York, only for new hires.
For new hires, yeah.
Good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
only for new hires. So it'll take a while,
Yeah,
as I think you
it's
know,
5 years.
for that to filter into the cost of the county.
Yeah, good to know, we're in good shape, but
Just,
we can be happy, we should be, but this is entirely in the heartbeat. We have to be very vigilant on this.
And when you go out in the public, if you're making any speech or talk to groups, they're always helpful to have somebody.
Oh,
That's a great example.
Because now you understand where some of the numbers come from, so it makes it a little easier for you to speak on it.
just out of curiosity, what county has the lowest unemployment rate? If we're the second lowest in the state, who has the lowest? I used to, and it's really good to see that we're actually, that our unemployment rate is just a little bit better than Lancaster County, because Lancaster County was able to crow that, I think, has the lowest unemployment rate in the state. But now we're beating Lancaster County on unemployment.
We've been neck and
Well,
neck
what,
with whoever the leader is for years.
Who has the lowest unemployment?
Southeast, it's a southeastern county, it's either Chester or
Okay.
Bucks. I'd have to take a look at it.
How many of these do you have available? I mean, we would decide, we certainly should put these on our camera. I think we already do some.
We do distribute to the various offices around this county, in the libraries.
Then the
But we
municipalities
have-
as well.
Yes. Yes.
It'd be good to put in libraries, to the libraries.
Yeah, we have been. They've been cooperative in taking those.
I sometimes, haven't done it lately, but sometimes I visit some of the municipalities just to sit in on their meetings and listen. It's always nice to have something to talk about, so if we would want to speak to this, that might be a very good location to do that, and I'll offer to make copies available for you.
We do drop them off to the municipal offices, what they do with them, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We don't give them a lot, but we can always ask them. We're a little stingy with some of them.
Yeah.
This has been a long time out there, not being used.
If they need, they can ask one. If they need more, they can ask one.
Guys have any other questions? Al? Mike? Anything? Is there any other business to discuss?
I just want to Bill really took that photo. Did you take that photo? You got the photo credit, I see that. Just making sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Joe.